Do you know where you came from? What's your name?
Malcolm Little.
No. That's the name of the slave masters who own your family. You don't even know who you are. Who are you?
Say Roseland. Roseland.
He was a pusher, a hustler, a thief.
You ready to tackle the streets?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let him come.
He was loved, respected, convicted.
State your number, Little.
I forgot it.
In a dream that's divine.
He was a prisoner who set himself free.
A Muslim must be strikingly upright.
I will not touch the white man's drugs, his liquor, his women.
So that those in the darkness can see the power of the light.
I will not lie, cheat, or steal.
I believe you will remain faithful. Yes.
He was a follower who became a leader.
You're not an American. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
He brought honor to disobedience.
I suggest you look outside that window.
You've been laying down and bowing down for 400 years. I think it's time to stand up.
All right, break it up. You got what you wanted.
Nah, I'm not satisfied.
That's too much power for one man to have.
And a voice to a people who longed to be heard.
You've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray.
You're saying you're anti-white.
No, you're saying I'm anti-white.
I'm sorry, Betty. I haven't been the best husband.
I love you.
Do you advocate violence?
No, sir.
Academy Award winner Denzel Washington's most electrifying performance. Director Spike Lee's most powerful film.
Malcolm, can we all live together?
I sincerely hope so.
Hello, welcome to Movie Humpers. My name is Bob Sham.
I am Angela.
Sounds here may be dogs, and this month our theme for January of 2024 is Portraits of the Artists. And for the majority of the month, we are concentrating on films star a guy, maybe you've heard of him. His name is Denzel Washington. And this week, we're dealing with some race themes. So it really works here, in which we're going to discuss our second ever Spike Lee movie. Do you remember what our first Spike Lee discussion was?
She Hate Me.
That's right, a very strange movie. This one's a little bit more, a little tighter than that movie, and much longer. This is
so much better than that movie.
This movie is not the longest. Barry Lyndon beats the runtime by 3 minutes, but this movie is the second longest movie we've discussed yet. We are talking about the 1992 film Malcolm X, directed by Spike Lee, written by Arnold Pearl, Spike Lee, Malcolm X, and Alex Haley. Of course, it's based on the autobiography of Malcolm X that was dictated to Alex Haley. Malcolm X died, and Haley finished it. And it stars Denzel Washington, Angela Bassett, Al Freeman Jr., Delroy Lindo, as well as many others. And it is produced, which is notable, by Marvin Worth and Spike Lee. Marvin Worth knew Malcolm X back in the day and had been trying to get some kind of Malcolm X film project in the works for a long time.
Okay.
It was written by, I think a few people got a hold of this script. And at one point, the director, Norman Jewison, was set to direct this movie. He is a white man. And so there was some pushback on that, especially by Spike himself. But Spike conceded that Norman's heart wasn't really that in it, because when he challenged him for it, Norman was just like, fine. But there was some issues trying to getting budget going for this. Arnold Pearl had passed away long before this movie, which is based on a script he wrote, and Spike Lee, through that script, kind of rewrote it with Arnold Pearl's script in mind. So one of the co-writers here passed away before this movie even came out. In post-production, it kind of ran out of its budget. Spike was pretty intent on making the movie the way he wanted to make it. I think the studios wanted it to cut around 2 hours. Of course, this movie's runtime is 3 hours and 20 minutes.
I'm glad he got what he wanted.
And a lot of stars at the time, and we see them at the ass end of the credits here. And we see them credited at the very end of the credits of the movie. People like Oprah, Tracy Chapman, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Bill Cosby. You remember that guy.
Janet Jackson.
We see them wearing Malcolm X caps at the end of the movie. But they all pulled their money and donated to finish up the post-production of this film. At that time, in 1992, Malcolm X shit had just kind of spiked in visual. It became like a fashion statement. You saw the X. You saw African Americans, Black Americans wearing the X on their clothes. It became a thing that was much more common. There was like a second wave of recognition of the speeches and ideas put forth by Malcolm X in that time.
Did that come before the movie or in conjunction with?
Before. So it was building up to that. And there was like a African identity movement. And you saw that early on in the 90s. So it just seems like it'd be a no-brainer to make a Malcolm X movie at that time. But it still was not all that as supported as you might think, at least.
Sure, but it does seem like that's maybe why they were finally able to push it over.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it definitely probably how the momentum of shopping it around finally got that momentum.
Yes.
But the studio still wanted it within a budget, which it exceeded, and wanted it within a time, which it exceeded. But some black celebrities came together and made sure it got finished off. So that's why you see them thanked at the end of the movie and stuff.
And I honestly don't know what you would have cut out. I don't think there was anything extra in this movie. This movie definitely did not drag. It actually didn't feel that long to me.
No,
there's so much that happens that you want to know what is the next thing that's going to happen.
Well, it helps that it's covering someone who's very interesting.
Yes.
Right? And
yes.
And you can't fault it. I just realized that in the scroll credits, the Terrence Blanchard, it was misspelled.
Aww.
But it's all right. Sometimes I misspell things. I'm not perfect.
Okay.
The Daniels, you know those guys that made Everything Everywhere All at Once, Swiss Army Man. One of the Daniels, I don't know if it's the Asian one or the white one. He made some, not too long ago, he said something about this movie, how, this is a great crime movie. And people responded in the way that you're responding right now, like a crime movie. Now, granted, there was a period in which Malcolm X, then Malcolm Little, a.k.a. Red, was a bit of a hustler.
Yeah, that's where he started.
And it's established that's established into his journey as he goes into prison to become the man that we know as Malcolm X.
Yeah.
But people just reacted very strangely to that. And then, there are crime elements in the movie, but even after sitting through it, I wouldn't say it's like the thing of the movie.
No, and there is all kinds of different crime, right? There is like the crime that he committed with his buddy at the beginning that led to him going to jail. There's the hate crime that's happening throughout the movie when he was a child, all the way up until like his house being burnt. But then we find out that that's like black on black crime at that point, like within their own community, potentially within the Nation of Islam.
Like that,
So there are all these like different levels of crime, but it is not a movie about crime. It is a movie about Malcolm X and what his journey.
Yes.
From where he was before until being Nation of Islam till where he ended up.
Speaking of Nation of Islam, I actually find this movie kind of hard to talk about.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's so long, because you just really want to just talk about Malcolm X.
Yeah.
In particular. So we'll probably be a little all over the place in discussing this movie, and I think that's okay. At the time, when you're thinking of like a Malcolm X movie coming out, Denzel Washington does seem like the obvious choice. He even kind of favors him in a lot of looks.
Yeah.
But he had apparently been playing Malcolm X in an off-Broadway show. I forget what that play is called.
Oh.
So he kind of already had the vibe. Now, Denzel, I compare his style, his acting, his presence as an actor. I've compared it to people like Cary Grant, Gregory Peck, in which that you always know who these guys are, but it's their charisma, the way they position themselves, they posture themselves that really carries their performance, their roles. They're not really chameleon type actors, but in this movie,
he is.
He's kind of a chameleon. You're sitting through this movie and you're kind of forgetting, like, I think with most of the Denzel movies we watch, we're going to be very conscious that we're watching the actor Denzel, but in this one, I kind of forgot in some ways that, this is a movie starring Denzel Washington. It did feel like, as a viewer, that he truly embodied the Malcolm X character.
I agree.
And so this so we get a lot of build-up, and Malcolm X is, Malcolm Little, he eventually goes to prison after a lot of shit.
Get some pretty cool zoot suits and some dancing.
There's a lot of cool, the dancing at the beginning and the clubs and stuff.
Yeah,
that was really cool, and it kind of balanced because there was dancing at the end of the movie too.
There was.
So Spike kind of made sure that it was like booking it in a certain way.
It's very brilliantly made in that they do take moments, like they literally danced for an entire song at the beginning, which you might not see, like you might think that's too much, but there were little things happening throughout that song, but it really like set the time and the place and the feeling of like where they were. And there's a whole thing about how one of the early things you see is him straightening his hair.
Yeah,
right?
And you're really reveling in the visuals of the time.
Absolutely.
And of course, Malcolm Little, he comes from a family, like his mother is half white. I think they said that like her mother was a black woman who was raped, right?
Well, and he says he thinks that one of the reasons she was initially attracted to his father is because his father was so dark, because she wanted to have darker children. She's
born into that animosity that you can justify that animosity. And his father, they get attacked when they're young by like this chapter in Omaha. That's where they grew up. He gets attacked and the father fights back, and they end up killing him by putting on some train tracks and running him over.
And the fucking insurance people say it was suicide, so they won't give her any money. And then she's got 6 children, I believe. There's 6 of them. And he's already getting in trouble. And so the social worker, she takes the kids away. And we find out some of these things more in flashbacks, but from a very young age, he was actually sent to live with a white family.
Yeah, he was educated amongst white people.
Well, it was a white like boarding house for boys, and he was the only black boy, and then he was the only black boy in his class.
He said he never even thought anything bad about the N-word because they just said it so freely.
He just thought it was
just a word.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how, there's a scene where teachers explain to him, like, no, you can't be a lawyer, so you have to be something else.
He's like, but I get the best grades.
Yeah, and he's got this education and he's in these spots, but it's still, and of course this is all leading into what guides him straight into, eventually he gets locked up, tangled up with this gangster, is played by Delroy Lindo. And he's running for his life because I don't know what the numbers meant exactly.
It's gambling.
Yeah, so he thinks Delroy's going to kill him and he runs off. And then, and how does he go to jail? No, they rob this elderly white man.
Yeah.
And they get caught because one of the dudes that they try to get in on it snitches on him. And that's when he goes to prison, and that's when he meets Baines, basically gets him to stop straightening his hair. And gets him
to
into
start reading the Bible
or the Quran.
Both.
Gets him to join the Nation of Islam as propped up at the time by Elijah Muhammad. And the Nation of Islam, and this is where we get the Malcolm. He's a black nationalist, a separatist. He's not sympathetic with white people at all. And he believes that they should be completely separated societies because you cannot trust the white man. I mean, the teachings of Elijah Muhammad are of... that white people are the devil, and they're asking to take inventory in Malcolm's life of, have you ever known a good white person? And he has a girlfriend who's white for like the first half of the movie. There's at one point when she is laying in bed with him, and he's saying, you're just going to go off and say that I raped you at some point, right?
Yeah, whenever you're done with me.
But she never actually leaves, but when they all get locked up because she's in on the robbery.
Well, she goes to jail too.
She goes to jail, but then she just goes and marries the white guy because they all have other real boyfriends or girlfriends, right? But I guess he just saw her as someone that was trying to get something from him.
Which is interesting because she backed him every step of the way.
It seemed like she stuck by him pretty good.
Even when he was kind of acting crazy, like right before they did that big job, like... He was doing like Russian roulette. Now we found out later that there was no bullet in the gun, but it was a fucking intense, amazing scene. Yeah. But even at the end of that, she just looked at him and she was like, "I love you." Like she was so into him, and maybe he just felt she was never genuine and she was just using him for what she could get out of him. I don't know. But she never seemed to actually do anything. But he said that the reason that he and Shorty, was his friends, went to jail
it's
for
played
so
by
long.
Spike Lee.
Yes. The reason he and Shorty went to jail for so long was because
they were sleeping with white women.
he basically was like, we all did the same crime. The girls had to go for a little while, but we got in trouble because we were sleeping with white girls.
He goes into prison, and that's when he gets lifted up. And the Nation of Islam really did lift him out of a hole.
Well, and he says there's two times in this movie that he has sort of like a revelation, and one is in his jail cell. I said that weird, jail cell, and he sees Elijah Muhammad appear to him.
The most dangerous creation in the world, in any society, is the man with nothing to lose. You do not need 10 such men to change the world. One will do. The earth belongs to us, the black man. And whatever is around it or on it or in it belong to us.
And now I'm in it. Because before that, he's like, I can't kneel down and pray. Like, I can't do this and that and the other.
Almost like a born again story. Almost like in a...
Yeah, like he has this vision of Elijah Muhammad, and from that day forward, he's like 1,000%. And he's writing to Shorty. He's writing to his old, gangster friends, trying to tell them about Elijah Muhammad, and they all think he's lost it. But he does eventually get out and immediately goes to meet Elijah Muhammad, and Baines has been out for a while, and Baines does the introduction.
Yeah.
And from that moment, he's so dedicated that Elijah Muhammad immediately is like, good. I'm going to put you in charge of some stuff.
They present it as though he gets traction very quickly. He becomes literally very pious. Mm-hmm. Like, he's almost the most literalized version of what they teach. And there's always that one guy, and it's a case of, when I was a kid, we tried to be very religious. When we were teenagers, we tried to be. And a lot of my friends as youngsters, we're trying so hard, or wanting to try so hard, or wanting to believe, and wanting for everything to be so sincere, and then there becomes this shell. The shell starts to break away around you, which these people, these adults that guide you, you see them failing harder than everyone around you.
Yeah.
And you see them contradicting the things that they demand that you understand and love and learn. And I think that's kind of the issue with Malcolm X. He embodied it better than the people who were teaching it to him.
He believed it and lived it. He walked it. All they did was say it. When I realized that no one else was doing that, and it was all, to me, my opinion, seemed to be all just appearances and saving face. Like, you want people to think you're a certain way, but then you're not.
Yeah.
And that's really what broke it for me.
And then it caused you to question your own sincerity and your own beliefs.
And the why. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, and so to start, you're kind of sympathetic with the idea of that nationalism, that separation, because it is an intensely racist society. We're talking about a diaspora of people who have been removed and put into a position, into a society. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. The Nation of Islam is so fascinating.
Yeah.
They would never let me in. I mean, look at me, right? But they have their own little mythologies and shit too. It's kind of like the Mormonism, in the sense how Mormonism is this Western vision of an ancient religion. They've got the new chapters of they claim that the Israelites came to the Americas and they did all this. The Nation of Islam is almost like this. It's like this diaspora vision of traditional Islam.
Yeah.
But it's not traditional Islam per se.
Right.
But they have their own little mythologies and ideas, like how Mormons do. It's just this very Western version of an Abrahamic religion, just like Mormonism.
Yeah.
But in a very different way, right?
Yeah.
But they have this mythology. They believe there's this one thing. I don't know if they all literally believe this, but it has been taught by Elijah Muhammad that there was this ancient doctor named Yaqub who lived on a Greek island thousands of years ago, and that he invented white people in a lab. He worked in this lab, and he had this tribe, this group around him that helped facilitate his ideas. And over time, they created white people. They say that black people were the original people.
Yes, then they do say that in this movie.
In evolutionary science, there is actually something to that. Absolutely.
And Jesus was not white.
Yeah.
If he was a real person,
of course not.
He was not white.
He looked like fucking Osama bin Laden, probably.
Yeah.
So just worship Osama bin Laden is what I'm saying. But yeah, but this guy Yakub was this evil scientist, and he had a large brain, like a large cranium, and I just want to say, hands out to the Nation of Islam, who are still active today under Louis Farrakhan. Louis Farrakhan, notably absent in this movie, as far as we can tell.
Yeah.
I come to you as a humble child of Yakub. Let me hang out with you guys. I just want to hang out with you guys and chill. Is that all right? Can I hang out with would you mind if I hung out with the Nation of Islam? I just want to chill, talk to them.
You just want to have conversations with people.
No, I want to hang out with the Nation of Islam.
I know, but like...
this humble son of Yakub. Look, I accept Yakub made me. I'm a child of Yakub.
Well, okay, listen.
Excuse me, Mr. X. Hi. I've read some of your speeches, and I honestly believe that a lot of what you have to say is true. And I'm a good person in spite of what my ancestors did. I wanted to ask you, what can a white person like myself, who isn't prejudiced, what can I do to help you and further your cause?
Nothing.
So this is what was so interesting about this to me, and I'm glad that you're talking about it in this way, is that Malcolm X did 100% commit himself to this version of Islam laid out by Elijah Muhammad. Every time he spoke, he said, as Elijah Muhammad has taught us, from the prophet Elijah Muhammad. This is what he told me. Everything he believed, down to like how you're supposed to select your wife, how women are supposed to behave. You know, all of that is like from Elijah Muhammad. And then when he realizes that Elijah Muhammad is a person.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it that way, but he's fallible. Like he's actually had sex with multiple young women, because you're supposed to pick a wife that is half your age plus 7, which is like insane. What if you want to get married when you're 25?
Well, okay, he breaks his own rule.
Well, he breaks his own rule, and he has multiple children with these very young women who at some point were all like secretaries of his or within the organization, and that all comes out, and it's actually Angela Bassett as his wife Betty, who comes to him and is like, you need to open your eyes. Like, you will die for this man.
She's the one that's kind of like...
But you can't see that he's betraying you.
Yeah.
He's not telling you the truth. He's not being honest about who he is. And so he goes and meets with these women. And it really opens his eyes to the fact that even Baines, who's the man who brought him into this organization, is very money driven. Like, they all have like these big cars, these big houses, and he and his wife don't. Like, they don't own their own house. They're living very
everything
weakly.
is through the nation.
Well, yeah, but they're not
because he has that much trust in them that all of their livelihood is built up in there.
Absolutely, but he's not getting those big payouts like these other men are on the council.
But he's also accused within the nation of trying to take over the nation because he is like,
he's on television. He's the face.
He's the face of it. He's the charismatic one.
Yeah,
he's the one that's out there.
And at one point, he speaks out after JFK is assassinated.
Oh yeah, this is
and
good.
He basically, they're like, "What do you feel about this?" Yeah, and he basically says all the terrible things that have been laid out by this country and this leadership and this man. It's just coming back. He's basically saying it's karma.
See, the way we're talking about this shows how successful Spike Lee executed this movie. And this is what you want when you're making like some kind of a biography.
Yeah.
Is that we're just talking about the story of the man, but we really have only watched this movie.
Yeah.
I've read maybe like a half of the autobiography of Malcolm X. I just never got around to finishing it. And a lot of this is true as it was written. Mm-hmm. Like I said, Louis Farrakhan isn't in this movie, and he has been accused of being at least a part of the conspiracy that got Malcolm X assassinated.
Yeah.
So there's this weird, interesting little balance there, because this movie becomes very critical of the Nation of Islam.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because he essentially, after that happens, he divorces himself.
They killed him. They killed his ass.
Well, yeah, but he divorces himself from the Nation of Islam before that happens. And he actually goes to Mecca.
Right.
And he says, this is something that everyone is supposed to do, this pilgrimage. I'm going to go. And then he just is learning about Islam as intended.
Now you may be shocked by these words, but I have eaten from the same plate, drunk from the same glass, and prayed to the same God with fellow Muslims whose eyes were blue, whose hair was blonde, and whose skin was the whitest of white. And we were all brothers, truly. People of all colors and races believing in one God and one humanity.
Islam is so wrapped into the culture of a lot of peoples all over
Yeah.
the planet. It's not like a race-specific religion. Just like Christianity, anybody can embody.
But the Nation of Islam was very much like it is a race.
That's what separates it from actual
Yeah.
Islam. And that's why a lot of Islamists or, speakers, they don't give much credence to the nation because of that.
I get it, because, he comes back and he says, from now forward, or he may say this before, but he basically is talking about his time there, and he says, I am sorry for all the negative things that I said about other leaders, speaking like
the
Martin
nonviolent
Luther
guys.
King Jr., people like that. Yeah, the nonviolence. I'm sorry for the things I spoke out against them. I hope that they forgive me for the things that I did say.
Yeah.
And, I would hope that they would reconsider the things they have said about me, because moving forward, he's like, he does still feel that the focus has to be on the black man. And I get that, because it's like we need to take back ourselves. White people can help us.
There's still a black nationalist undercurrent. He's just a
we
little
have to
more
build ourselves up
open
first.
to
Yeah.
outside support. And I think a lot of people maybe interpret this like he becomes more into the MLK side of things. And I don't think it's that clean.
One of your more controversial remarks some times back was a call for black people to get rifles and form rifle clubs. Do you still favor that for self-defense?
Well, I don't see why that's controversial. I think that if white people find themselves the victims of the same kind of violence that black people have found themselves victims of here in America, and if the government was either unable or unwilling to do anything about it, I think that it would be intelligence on their part to defend themselves.
What about the guns, Malcolm?
When you tell your people to stop being violent against my people, I'll tell my people to put away their guns.
It almost feels honestly more like the Black Lives Matter movement.
Black Panthers.
Where it's, Black Panthers. But it's like white people you can support, but this is not about you. And, you can give us money and you can, support what we're doing, but we within ourselves have to come together and, bring ourselves up. We can't fight amongst ourselves.
As he's going out of the nation, he is embodying more. He's not like, the Black Panthers and what he was trying to do are a little different, but they started to meld more into more of this pan-Africanist identity. Pan-Africanism in the sense of that those that are descendant of African descent, that are diasporate all over the world, to present a solidarity between all of these people.
Yeah.
I think that as black people in America strive to throw off the shackles of mental colonialism, they will also reflect their desire to throw off the shackles of cultural colonialism. I believe that a mental and a cultural migration back to Africa, not necessarily a physical migration, not at this point, but a mental and cultural migration back to Africa, which only means that we reaffirm our bond with our brothers over there, would help to strengthen us here in America, black people in America, not only spiritually, but as well as giving us the incentive to solve some of our problems here at home.
He never turned nonviolent. He was an advocate of the guns.
Yeah, he said to the end, he's like, I'll have my gun as long as I need my gun.
And that the way Spike Lee plays up the paranoia, in which they blow up his house at one point.
Well, and I feel like we've almost gone through the whole thing. Yes, his house is blown up, and then he is supposed to give this one big last speech, and the way they play it in the movie is as though he knows. He even says to his guy who's supposed to be his bodyguard, "It is now a time for martyrs." I don't know if he actually said those words.
He knew he was going to die.
But he knew he was going to die. He basically was like, I shouldn't be speaking today at this place. Because it was all building up, and he's like basically in hiding. And he even says to his wife, I don't think this is just the Nation of Islam. I'm going to stop saying that. Because he's also got like theoretically CIA guys following him. Like, he's being watched. He's being tapped. Like, people are listening to his conversations. There's that one moment where the white agent guys are listening to him talking to his wife on the phone about how much he loves her and stuff.
You come on down. Bring the girls, too.
The girls and I miss you so much.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Compared to King, this guy's a monk.
Good night, dear. Sleep well. I love you.
I kind of knew this, but not a lot, that Martin Luther King had a lot of affairs.
He had infidelity issues. Yeah. I ultimately don't think that affects what his greater message is.
I don't either. But
the CIA did uncover that and tried to use it against him.
I just think it's interesting that even that, and even at that point, like, he had genuinely become a loyal,
do you think the movie was positing that the nation was working with the CIA?
Well, he says that at one point. He says, I don't think it's just them. They're getting help. He said, I think they're getting help.
It's like the enemy of my enemy. And Farrakhan...
Like, even if nothing else, if they're following him, you know they're also following those guys. Like, they have to know the plan. You would think.
Yeah. And Farrakhan kind of admits from time to time, at least, that his rhetoric helped to lead to it. I think they found that he was like an hour away from where he was killed, or at least in that vicinity. Mm-hmm. But he runs the Nation of Islam, the modern iteration of it as it is now.
So he was the predecessor, which at one point would have been Malcolm.
Farrakhan is super interesting because when asked about that, he seems to be like, yeah, we cleaned house. Like, we straightened up our bed. Like, he's an interesting guy because he is extremely honest, you know? It seems like he doesn't really mince words.
There's, like, no denying it, right? Like, to deny it would be idiotic.
Well, I think the question is, how involved was he in particular?
For sure, but he's gonna say, like, as a group, yes, we got rid of him.
But, again, Farrakhan, particularly as a character, at least isn't named or is noticeably absent.
Well, and, you know, at least Malcolm X's daughter, at least, thought that Farrakhan was much more responsible because she tried to kill him.
Well, yeah.
And she attempted to assassinate Farrakhan, and she got put in jail for it.
Yeah, that's what kind of happened to the family as they went on. It was some real tragedy.
There was a lot. I looked up about Betty afterwards because I was very interested in her. His wife Betty was a very devout Muslim. She was a nurse. She was a teacher. Like, she led women's studies for women, other Muslims in their group. And she, like, fiercely loyal to him. Above everything, she believed in Malcolm and she believed in Islam. And when she saw that things were not going well, she was concerned about him and she spoke up.
You notice that after their house blew up, he's being interviewed by Christopher Moltisanti from The Sopranos.
Yeah.
Which is evidence that the New Jersey mob was also involved in that.
What?
Christopher Moltisanti was interviewing him.
Okay, you're just trying to connect
the Jersey
to the
mob.
Sopranos. Okay, listen.
Also involved.
That's a fictional story.
Oh, you know, I really love. I think one of my favorite parts of this movie is when Malcolm, you know, he's rolling the nation, is falling apart, just going in full paranoia. He knows that this isn't going to end well, and there's this shot that Spike did where he's just kind of. It just looks like he's just kind of floating, like the way the camera is following him.
There've been times that I thought I could last for long, but now I think I'm able.
Son, you all right? Are you okay?
Good.
I recognize you. Don't you pay them folks no never mind. You just keep right on doing what you doing.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll pray for you, son.
Oh, thank you.
Jesus will protect you.
This era of Spike is probably like his prime era.
Absolutely.
You know, once you get in the 2000s, things kind of go a little up and down. But like this era, getting closer to the do the right thing era. Oh, this is the good shit, right?
This speaks to what you were talking about before about how, like, you have a certain level of fame when you're being misunderstood. Like, she just saw him as, like, a strong black leader, religious leader.
The image of you at some point becomes bigger than the words that came out of you. And I think you can even ascribe that to people like Jesus, right?
Absolutely.
Like, if you look at what Jesus is telling you to do, and you look at these people who tout his name the highest, political power to, like, push people down and destroy lives, it's like, God, it would be so much better if they actually literalized and focused on those words. It's, you know, a lot of people that are mad at religion, they're not angry at the Jesuses of the world. It's more of like the people that follow them and what they embody and how they have
manipulate,
how they have molested these ideologies to just put themselves up. Even to someone who is not religious, it just feels so perverse.
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, we see Nelson Mandela saying words that Malcolm X spoke to the class.
As Brother Malcolm said, we declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be given the rights of a human being, to be respected as a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring into existence. By any means necessary.
And this was between when he got arrested and apartheid being... So this was done in between those times. So apartheid, I think, a couple of years later would end in South Africa, but you know, some of these things don't really truly end, do they? But I guess it is, if you want to say it's better than then yes, you can say that. But Spike really gave you an immersive biography here, and Malcolm X's most immersive chameleon-like role. I think it stands out.
You meant to say Denzel Washington.
See?
You believe so much that he... I mean...
That's, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so true.
He doesn't have a role like this.
No,
good as he is, nothing feels like his performance here.
No. You know, there's this moment when the sermon is being given and they actually start showing real photos of Malcolm X and real videos. And they time it so perfectly in this moment where he talks about... You may think you know all these things about him, but did you ever speak to him? Did he ever smile at you? Were you ever really around him? Because then that's the only way to actually really know who he is. And they say like the smile thing, and the Malcolm X like turns to someone and he does smile, and it's like Denzel looked so much like him naturally.
It was a no-brainer who was going to play him.
No one else could have played this role.
Yeah, right.
No one else could have ever played this role. It was so brilliantly done. I actually kind of appreciated how it ended when it ended. And they didn't do like and this person went on to do this, and this person went on to do this.
Well, that would have been sadder.
It would have, but I did just want to say, like I did read about Betty afterwards. And so she then was a single mother of 6. I think they only show 4 children in the movie, but they actually had 6 children. And she became a doctor while raising her children on her own. And when one of their daughters was in her 20s, she, like we mentioned, tried to kill Louis Farrakhan and was caught and sent to prison. And so her 10-year-old son went to live with Betty, his grandmother. And he was acting out, and he really just wanted to be sent back to his mother, apparently, like in reading more and more about him. But he set her house on fire one night, and apparently he thought, I'm just going to set this fire, and I'm going to get in trouble, and they're going to send me back to my mom. I don't know if he understood that his mom was in jail. And instead of Betty leaving out the back door to safety, she was trying to save her grandson, and she ran through the fire that was in the hallway.
It ended up killing her.
And it ended up killing her 3 weeks later. She had burns on like 80% of her body. Like but she was a fighter and she was a very strong woman. And even in the end, like in her last act, she was trying to save someone that she loved. I just think she's kind of a remarkable person.
Didn't the grandson get murdered in Mexico City?
He did.
He was trying to do some immigrant labor organization or something?
I believe he was maybe arrested a couple other times. But yeah, from what I read, when he was around 28 maybe, he was in his 20s. He was in Mexico City and he was found dead, beaten to death, and allegedly he had been down there doing work for like Mexican workers' rights within the U.S.
Well, it's just too bad to hear. I mean, he did have plenty more children though, but I guess that specific family line
and his name was Malcolm.
Tragic. Yeah, that is that story of Spike Lee's immersive biography of Malcolm X, very well done. But we're going to review it. You're going to give 1 through 5. I'm going to 1 through 5 combined for best out of 10. Just the fact that we got it mixed up with the movies and the realities and the way it just seems so interchangeable. And I think that is a sign that Spike actually made a very successful biography. I thought this movie got some accolades. It did not win any Academy Awards.
Which is insane because Denzel should have won. This movie should have won.
How much do you give it?
5.
Ooh, wow. I'm going to give it a...
I wouldn't change anything about it. And I think it was extremely well made.
Well, it's going to at least hit a 9. So if I give it a 4.25... then that's going to put it...
I think it's an S tier.
It's going to go into S tier.
Yeah, Al Pacino won for Scent of a Woman.
Yeah, I mean, Al Pacino always goes hard in his roles. I mean, he's a great actor. Sure. But I felt like this is definitely a much more of a standout performance compared to that.
I do too.
They gave it to him because he was playing a blind guy, you know. But check out the list here in the Movie Tumpers all-time greats, S tier.
Movie Tumpers.
Malcolm X, all up in alphabetical order, joins the rank of S tier. Our first Denzel S tier movie here. Will there be more this month? Who knows? I don't know. Maybe. Check the show notes for links of where other places where you can find us. Like and subscribe. If you listen to it on podcasts, like on Spotify or Apple, give us a nice little star review. Just press that there and then move on with your day. What do you think of Malcolm X, Spike Lee? What's your favorite Spike Lee movie? What other Denzel Spike movies are He Got Game and Mo Better Blues? He was in those movies, but we're only talking about one Denzel Spike movie. We will be discussing a Denzel Tony Scott movie later in the month. He was in a few Tony Scott movies. They were very well known for working together, but we will have at least one. I tried to hit one of each of Denzel's famous pairings, but yeah, we hope you enjoyed this and
thoughts and prayers to the haters.